Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Can we continue? Can I give you 30 seconds to settle down? The noise at the door. Welcome back, everyone. We had agreed for 11:47. It's like 13 minutes into my time. So that means I can take 13 minutes later, right? It's just girl math, right? Anyway, we're going to move directly into our next speaker. I hope everyone is okay. I can see so many people are still chewing, which is fair. That's fine. We're going to go into our next speaker. Our next speaker, she's also joining us virtually, right? Is Miss Genevieve. Guys, clap for me, please. It's such a complicated name. Olivia, Chief Executive Officer of AgriLab.
Everybody. I so wish I was with you guys. I had it on the plan, but other plans kept me, unfortunately, in Accra. Unfortunately, I am hoping a lot of it will be also very important and useful for us in the work that we want to do in Africa. So I'm going to tell you a little short story so that we can be able to hopefully gain some time back on the project that I ran in Haiti. This was a project which was commissioned by the World Bank with the government of Haiti, and it was rather successful. Also, there was a lot of lessons learned.
Hi, Genevieve.
In terms of yes,
I will have to interject a bit and have our sound guys fix the sound meanwhile. If you can just wait a bit before we continue.
could you repeat? Sorry.
I was saying I'm going to interject and ask you to please wait for our tech guys to fix the sound because there's a bit of a. I'm not sure it's okay. It's better now. It's okay now. Is it okay?
Yeah. Yeah, from my side it's better because I was having a hard time hearing you. Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, you sound much better now. Thank you so much.
I apologize. The internet sometimes plays with us. Let's pray and hope it stays on. So, yes, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the project that I did in Haiti, and I stopped, unfortunately, when we lost our president. The president was killed, and that made risk. Many of you are probably aware of the fact that Haiti right now is in a state of emergency, so nothing really moves easily because of gang. But it was at the time we still had the gangs, but they hadn't gotten to this level. So the project has been put on hold in terms of Haiti, but that also gave me time to go back and start researching what went right, what went wrong, and I will speak more about this in the panel and also where we're taking this. So if you guys are not aware of Haiti, it is actually was the first island that Christopher Columbus came to when he was looking for India, on his lost way from Portugal. It is beautiful, it is tropical, and it is full of history. We call it Haiti Chérie, which is my darling. And there is a song which says, there is no more beautiful place than Haiti. In terms of history, I mean, we abound in history. This is Citadelle La Ferrière, which is on top of the mountain and has I would say almost a 360 view of all the waterways. And it was built by Christophe, which was the president. He was not actually the president, he was the king of Haiti. So when we look at shows like I forgot the name, just escaped me, about black aristocracy, we had it in Haiti. And this was about 17, we started about 1804. We had the independence, so this was about probably 1850. And he built this castle where they basically put everything up, and it still stands. It has things in there that you will never see in other parts of the world, such as cannon from France, England, and Spain. And it was a full city. Now, unfortunately, as I spoke about, Haiti today is aflame, has a lot of challenges, and this is really about how do we get things back in. And that social breakdown is also exacerbated by economic realities, which is access to money and access to fund. And ideally, when you have economic realities such as that, that there, it's not to say that the banks are not functioning, the banks are functioning, but there isn't work or there isn't clarity as to when the money is going to come in. Mostly now, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware, it's going to be a very interesting, tumultuous time for Haiti, since the United States has just recently enacted something which was the removal of the temporary protected status for Haitian citizens. TPS was enacted in 2006, about 25, 30 years ago, when we had the first earthquake. Then there were more people who were brought in when we had floods. And in the last 4 years, 6 years with President Biden, there was also an extension to allow people to come in for a certain time, gain skills, and with that one, they were supposed to go back. But however, the security issue in Haiti creates that there is no job, there's no ability. People can spend 10 days where they can't leave their house. The challenge of the Haitian community also is that you need not be rich. You just need not to be in the street to be kidnapped. So all of that is creating a situation where we have a broken economy. Um, Even though the good still relies, the inflationary aspect of it, or the inflationary aspect of the economy. Did I lose? My apologies. Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you,
I can
Genevieve.
hear you.
Okay, yes. Okay, yes. Go back. It's kind of some of the stuff that we learn in blockchain also. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work the way we expect it. And we just keep going. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Genevieve.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so um, in terms of the economics realities, so going back to economy, what you need to be able to do is not only at times sell within your country, but you need to have trade. And trade is really what is going to actually create more incentive for people to work. And if people are stuck at home for 20 days without being able to go out in the street because they risk getting kidnapped, and as I was saying, you don't need to be rich. The kidnappers basically figure out what can your family pay, and they use that as a mechanism. And this is something which is still happening. Now, in terms of the challenges, I believe the speaker before myself talked about some of the challenges with smallholder farmers. Now, one of the things that we did was we actually looked, and this is why normally I don't like to talk about supply chain. I like to talk about what I call value chain. And this is something which I think is very important for Africa. We, when we, many a time we're concentrating at the local level, and that makes absolute sense. But what we also have to do is we have to look at what is needed to retain value closer. And then the other challenge that I have is when, so what we did with our blockchain, it wasn't just a track and trace of the goods, it was also a track and trace of the value. Because as something gets further from the farm gate, it gains more value, it has more transformation, which at the end means that the consumer is going to be paying more. So, how do we retain that value locally? So, I do know that with South Africa, you guys have already a lot of factories. So, when you have the fish or the meat, you're packaging it before sending it to the US. So, you're creating job locally. In many other places, such as in the cocoa industry or even in the cashew industry in Cote d'Ivoire, what will happen is the cashew is collected, put on a boat, and then transformed in Vietnam, and then sold to the rest of the world. So we're not even going to talk about climate actions that this creates in terms of the carbon footprint, but it's more also that we're not retaining, we're not growing the value of the goods to where the higher price is retained locally. So for Africa, there is an opportunity to really look how can we, instead of sending it to Europe or to Vietnam or to the US to be processed, have those processing plants here. So where I've been looking at is how do we bring in that financial aspect. It can be from working with funds. It can be working with the creating better processing facilities because that also benefits the farmer in some ways. Because this is what we were able to show with the Haitian project was that by keeping the product locally and doing as much about it locally, you actually also shifted the product to where the ownership was still with the farmer. They didn't need to know. But by the time all the processes got done, it was people who were now service providers to them rather than buying from them. So you remove that stress of the financial, you actually funded the operation, and at the end, what we saw is a farmer went from about 2% of the revenue of the fruit to nearly 68%. So there was an uplift of 750% in their income. Challenge of these things, though, is, however, you have a time technical illiteracy. You don't have access all the time to internet, and you could also. The other piece was that in order to make people compliant, and this is my challenge to most blockchain, is you have to have the flow of fund dictated, not need to be done in. So we didn't have a token. We tokenized the value as we went, understood losses along the way, but we're also able to defray by getting more things to market. And with the data, we were able to reduce the waste by about 74% and increase export by 48%. So everybody knew what they needed to do, everybody had a job to do, and everyone got paid based on what they did in the system. Because this project was with the World Bank and the government of Haiti, we had their support in terms of the money flow, being able to demonstrate to them also the money flow. And the other aspect was that this allowed for even the higher amounts that came in to be defrayed. So with $40,000 in an account, we were able to do 6 missions. And at the end, we were able to actually bring back 750% more to the farmers. Now, the key was to understand all the aspects of the value chain and rewarding everyone in the value chain or putting them in a de-risk mechanism whereby the person who normally used to buy the mangoes from the farmer no longer bought the mangoes. He picked up the mangoes, made sure they were the right one, and the farmer had to know, hey, you give bad ones, that means you get less money. So make sure you have proper products that you're delivering. And at the end, no one actually decreased their amount. So one of the myths I want to debunk is that blockchain technology does not take away quote unquote middle people. It rehabilitates them to where their risk factor is now lessened, which then allows them to become more of a service provider rather than a risk taker. Obviously, some of the farmers didn't have smartphones. So we were able to prove you don't need a smartphone, you need an SMS, or if they can't read, it can be read for them. And the other aspect is that you do need to have the people on the field who understand, who are actually working with the farmers to help them get to the right outcomes. Now, the mechanics is very much like what we found. It was like it wasn't one application. It felt more like 6 applications because each person had different things they wanted and different way of calling the data. The farmer was counting by pieces, the exporter was counting by dozen, and the importer was looking at weight. So all of those things needed to be translated. So it really showed that what one of the biggest roles for blockchain is really to be a data. Now, when I built it on what was available in terms of a DLT. And so sometimes I think Professor Horst actually talked about, what are we looking at? Is it a permission? Is it public? I think the key to the system is that we need to decouple permission versus unpermission to be more about privacy versus lack of privacy. There are certain data which should be open, like how many tons, not how many mango did one farmer do, but how many tons of mango did Haiti export and where did it go? That's public information. How many mango a producer did and how much money he got is a different thing. And where we need to do is to protect that person so that the arbitrage that we know always happen is not going to be something that takes him out. Now, in terms of what is very, very important is community buy-in. We sometimes think it's just the farmer, but it's not only the farmer, it's those who are buying in the community. And one of the challenges that I thought was really well put out was the poultry challenge. You want to know where your food come from. And actually, I think it's more than about us individuals. We live today in a world where finances are very difficult because of the global uncertainty and the rising, with what's happening in Hormuz, that means price of gas is going up, which means price of food goes up. And when we go to the supermarket, we want to pay the least amount possible. But I think something which is more important is we want to be able to go to the supermarket and know we're going to find the food. We are going to want to go to the supermarket and know that the food that we're getting is safe. So early on, somebody talked about being able to test from one place to the other. And I think this is something that blockchain can give. Now, that doesn't mean that when I'm buying that food, that I want to see that it was tested, the result of the testing, but I want to know that it's tested. The other challenge is, and I think this is something where there's a very big opportunity for Africa, is guess what, guys? The UK, 60% of their food is imported. Now, quite a bit of it comes in from Africa via the Netherlands. In the US, a city like Miami does not grow any of the food that its population consumes. And I would suggest probably the US at about 40%, if not more, of food imports. We are entering a new world, in my view, where cybersecurity is something we're talking about quite a bit. I think that every nation needs to now start thinking of food as a matter of national security. So, which means, how do you assure that the data that you're receiving is the right data? So I believe that using blockchain, distributed ledger technology is going to be the key in ensuring that this information is correct and that there has not been any tampering in between. I do realize a lot of people are talking about AI, but I said 2 days ago, somebody was talking about, oh, AI can be used with blockchain. I'm like, okay, so you're getting it on AI, you're getting data on database on AI, and you're taking that and you're now putting it on a blockchain. What about the dog in the middle? How do we know somebody didn't change the data? So, in ways, we have to become more vigilant to be able to bring these kind of things to scale, because as we move our food, if there is an instance, I last week actually, there is a company which I'm going to be interesting to see how well they do, who had to recall every lettuce import that they did from Mexico because it had a agent in there which was causing people to be sick. So these are millions of dollars because it was actually the lettuce which was used in Taco Bell, which is a very popular taco chain around the U.S. Now, if we think about those disturbances, if we were to have an agent come in, how would we deal with it? And my learning is also, if we're not compensating our farmers fairly, who's to stop them from being tempted or coerced by a bad agent to do something to our food? So it's not only necessary to make sure that we know where our food is coming from, but it is now really talking, because I believe one of the questions was, how do we speak to government? Governments have to be assured that people have enough to eat, that the food that they eat is not going to make them sick, and that they know that they're not getting any negative action coming in through their shore. So really, this is not about changing how we consume our food, because in some places in the world, we still have to go to the marketplace. But it's making sure that those individuals are well compensated, and also that we continue to be healthy. In my mind, we're entering a new order of how things are done and how we consume or move our food. And I would say in the last 6 years, there's been a lot of improvement in technology. I actually do love when there is a downturn in the crypto world because that allows people to now start really building the technology and making it necessary. So we're hearing a lot of complexity, which before a lot of the project were not as complex. It was, I'm just doing A. So mine was a bit complex because I was doing mangoes from Haiti to the US, but I was also paying and I was keeping track of how much. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to also look at the circular economy. How is it affecting the food intake? And that is something that I think, thanks to the new technologies that are available, we can actually do at scale without costing too much. So thank you very much, and I look forward to getting your questions once I at the panel. Thank you.
And a applause for Genevieve. Thank you. Thank you so much, Genevieve. We're going to move right into the question and answer session. Do you have any questions? Oh, a few. Can I have a moderator?
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am, for that presentation. I just wanted to ask a clarification question. When you were speaking about the value chain, I wanted to ask what you mean by risk takers becoming service providers. I didn't really understand the context you meant in terms of risk takers as well as the transformation that happens for them to become service providers. Thank you.
Sure. So if you think about it, what usually happens is somebody comes to the farmer and says, I'm going to buy this from you. And what they do is they take the goods and they go and they sell it up or they transform it. As a result, the farmer may get what we've found is globally 2% of the total value, which will not even go to the retail customer, but going to the wholesale customer. Mostly if it's getting, and it doesn't need to be, so it's not as high when you have a local. So I'm going to use, let's say, the mango, what we found with the mango. A Haitian mango, a farmer was getting at best 3 cents, at best, or less for his mango. That same one mango sold on the shelves of the US for $5. Then when you went back, you found out that there was somebody who sold it to the supermarket. They paid $4. Then that person obviously bought it from someone who had to pay the cost of transportation and everything else. But that cost of transportation didn't equal to that 5,000% increase from the local. Now, many a time I'm going to bring it now into the cashew nuts in Côte d'Ivoire so you can understand in the African context. So the Côte d'Ivoire farmer may get $1 a ton. That is then taken to for transformation into Vietnam. And in Vietnam, it's about $6 a ton. You could say, okay, there was cost for transportation. Now, if that $6 is being given to Vietnam, why can't that $6 be also given to a producer or company in Ivory Coast? But that company, if they buy it, what is happening is they're still buying it for pennies, for $1 a ton from the farmer and making 5x or maybe even sometime 20x. So how can we actually have systems working in tandem so that that company who's buying no longer has a 40% waste, because the farmer knows that I'm not going to get my true value. So how do I make more? It's by giving some stuff which are junk. So that's how you de-risk. And also from a territory, a sovereign nation, you're now creating job locally, you're creating knowledge locally, and you are actually getting that influx of trade money directly into you. I hope that helped.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you so much, Genevieve. I did see a couple more hands. I am going to end it here because I made a promise to you, right? And I want to keep my promise. So thank you so much for that, Genevieve. We're going to end the question and answer session here. And I think your insights are so valuable. Because you highlighted the prospect that blockchain has and carries in creating, a fairer and more inclusive value chains that increase farmers' income and strengthen communities. So I think it's such an important point to raise. I think let's just give her a hand so that we can move swiftly into it. Thank you. We value that so much. If you do have more questions, you are more than welcome to write them down. We will get them across and we will get them answered for you. Ne? So we're going to move to our final speaker before we have our panel. I know you're excited to hear that. So yeah, our next speaker is Mr. Anzil Adams, who's also joining us virtually. He's the CEO of Data Ledger. He will be speaking on the Data Ledger and Wine Ledger. So let us put our hands together for Mr. Anzil. We're ready when you are.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. Bonolo, if you can just put that slide on for me, please. And then just let me know if everybody sees it. Whilst he's busy, Madam Program Administrator, Prof. Nulu, Bonolo, thank you. UJ, thank you for this invitation. It's great to learn again new things from everybody. Some interesting and very great speakers. Julian, it's good to see you. Good to hear you. Good to see that you're doing some interesting stuff at the CSIR. I met Julian a few years ago when he was still studying at UCT. We've done some interesting work with the CSIR about 3-4 years ago when we, under the Ilima project of them, developed the first proof of concept to digitalize the Moringa supply chain. That was some very interesting learning. I have made a note of the projects that I've been involved with since I started Data Ledger in 2019. When Data Ledger was started in 2019, it was probably the first blockchain design and development company in South Africa, and probably one of the first on the African continent. And I was very fortunate at the time to have been able to procure the blockchain research of Queensland University of Technology in Australia. And they were building a track and trace solution to track and trace beef out of Australia into China. Now, what happens in China is that the Chinese would take a T-bone steak. They would take the prime beef meat out, and they would put cat and dog meat in there, sometimes rat meat in there. And they would copy the brand as it is. And you can imagine that when it gets to this 5-star restaurants and it's discovered that they're actually eating dog meat and not premium Australian beef, that the brand value gets destroyed overnight. So that was an interesting opportunity for us to look at. We've worked on wine, the halal supply chain. I'm looking through this. I've worked on coffee with probably the world's premier agri supply chain blockchain solution called Egg Unity. I've worked on the mining sector with a company out of Switzerland called Mine Spider. We tracked and traced rare earth metals for electrical vehicle battery production in Europe. That was interesting. One of the interesting stuff I'm working on now is on developing solutions for preventative healthcare in South Africa and to understand how blockchain and AI can actually redesign healthcare in South Africa. That's interesting. Did some stuff on smallholder farmers, supply chain commercialization, and signed MOUs with Food Lovers Market. That was an interesting project. And yeah, I'm currently busy with PhD research on addressing agentic inequality. And the idea is to actually use lived experiences of communities or marginalized communities in South Africa so that they can understand how to deploy AI as an economic, socioeconomic catalyst. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, a little bit of my background. But, having the graveyard slots, and having listened to some fantastic presentations on the technology, I suppose my job is to turn this conference on its head and come in with something completely new, because my objective in this space is no longer to sell the technology, but to rather sell the problem I'm solving. Right? So the focus for this next 10 minutes is to engage you at a level where we begin to think about, what a future South African economy can look like and why it is necessary, right? If you consider that between 75 and 85% of technology solutions fail globally, there's one reason why it does so, is that, it does not actually take in consideration the complexity of the real world where it's supposed to be deployed and adopted. So when you think about blockchain and you think about AI, it's important to understand that in the beginning of this fourth industrial revolution, people like Mark Zuckerberg, people like the Google owners, the Apple guys, NVIDIA guys, there's about 6 of these companies that control all the algorithms in the world. And so when you go onto Facebook every day, when you go onto Instagram every day, you basically give your data to these people for free. And what they then do is they design algorithms, and these algorithms then provide you with adverts and all kinds of information that, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all these guys are being paid for, but we're giving our data away free of charge. And from a future South African economy perspective, we need to investigate how we're going to actually prevent that from happening, and how we can solve the poverty, unemployment, inequality nexus that's so divisive at the moment in South Africa. So let me start with a statement, and then I'm going to back it up with my understanding of blockchain and AI. Transformation in South Africa cannot work, and it will never work. You cannot transform a failing apartheid designed economy into something that's going to be sustainable for a future South Africa. And if you look at this provenance flow, provenance is about origin, it's about data. I want you to see two things in this slide. The one is the physical world, the world where you see the trucks in. That's the analogous world, and on top of that, that's the digital world. And in South Africa, I want to superimpose on that too. The reality of the South African economy is that there are two economies that Thabo Mbeki raised the first time in the early 90s that are running parallel to one another, almost like this image is showing you. The one is the formal economy, which is typically white-owned, JSE listed companies are on there, highly skilled people, very globalized. And it's the economy the ANC has been trying to transform the last 30 years with very, very little success, because you cannot transform a failing apartheid design economy into something successful. Next to it is the informal economy. The majority of South Africans live there, black, unskilled, unbanked, underbanked, very inclusive, huge amounts of cash. If you consider that the South African government pays every year over 650 billion rand of SASSA grants into that economy, and that a sizable amount of that money is actually expatriated through foreign nationals into the African continent. So those are the realities. So what must the future South African economy look like, and how can blockchain and AI actually drive that? So future South African economy must be the integration of the formal and informal economies, so that using digital tools like AI and blockchain, so that a future digital economy can emerge out of that. And with a digital economy is going to come new skill sets, new understanding, new know-how for our people to begin to compete for the amounts of cash that's so abundant in our societies. Now, let me give you an example of what provenance flow can do in how supply chains or value chains can actually teach us how this future digital economy can look like. Imagine, and we're doing a project in the Eastern Cape. There's a little bit of background music, a sound that I'm hearing, but can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? So, Beef Ledger is an interesting project, and we're running a simulation in Queenstown in the Eastern Cape. All right? Imagine you have a white farmer. Now, this is the idea of what the integration of the formal and informal economies can look like, so that there's large amounts of wealth created throughout the informal sector through an integrated economy that I was referring to earlier. Imagine you have in the Eastern Cape in Queenstown, you have a white farmer that's been farming for 3 or 4 generations, right? When an animal is born on day one, that animal weighs 100 kilograms and it's worth 1,000 rand. That farmer then farms that animal for 30 months, and by month 30, that animal is worth 30,000 rand. But the challenge that farmer has is that farmer continues to spend money for 30 months. There's no income for this farmer for 30 months. But around him, there is townships, scattered townships all over, where people have cash. They are underbanked. They sleep with their money in their houses, under their beds, but they've got cash. Now, what the blockchain does is on day one is it creates a digital twin of that animal. It says this animal has this digital identity. It's worth 1,000 rand. It weighs 100 kilograms. And what we can enable to do with that digital twin is we can fractionalize it in 10 parts. So let's imagine we can fractionalize an animal in 10 parts, and stakeholders in the informal economy are allowed to actually purchase a portion of that animal. Now, what the blockchain does is it tracks and traces verified data on the growth and value add of that animal over a period of time. So at any particular time in an animal's growth, an AI algorithm that we've designed can actually go in, analyze the information, and give that information back to the person who spent the $100. Now, when that animal goes by month 30, and the animal that's ready for slaughter and is worth 30,000 rand, theoretically, that 100 rand has grown in value over a period of time, 30 months, into potentially 3,000 rand. Now, if you take 100 rand and you put it in any bank, Capitec, First National Bank, you'd be lucky if you get to 175 rand after you have invested it. Can you hear me? You'd be lucky if your value is, 175 bucks. But with this system and the growth that's monitored over 30 months, your 100 rand could potentially be worth 3,000 rand. Now, that's a substantial amount of value add that can be monitored on the blockchain, integrated with AI, and all kinds of financial projections can be done. So if a township entrepreneur, a township stakeholder, invests in 1,000 of these cows that are all listed on a blockchain system, you can imagine what a future integrated South African economy, in a very simplistic way that I've explained, can look like. So our objective with blockchain is no longer only to focus on, what the design or the development of that may look like, but specifically to understand what the feasible design of these blockchain solutions may look like, so that we can design and work towards an emergent digital economy in South Africa, where formal and informal economies are integrated to create this kind of value I'm talking about. The same thing with banking. Imagine that this future digital economy is a peer-to-peer economy where people actually exchange value on the blockchain. They're buying stuff on the blockchain without having to go through a third party like a bank. You know that bank cost is substantially high in this country. If you consider that Capitec Bank has 26 million second economy stakeholders, they made known their results a few months ago. It was the most valuable JSE stock price. And all of the clients, 26 million of them, are in the informal sector. And all that the informal stakeholder does is it banks with Capitec, but doesn't see the benefit that the shareholders of Capitec make in Stellenbosch. They become billionaires, and all our people are doing is they're banking with them. They're charging them bank costs, they're charging them all kinds of stuff. But the people who bank with Capitec Bank is not seeing any benefit of it. The millionaires are the shareholders that owns the bank. The value should be recalculated, reestablished, redesigned. So when we talk about, in the blockchain context, about supply chains or value chains, we no longer actually call it that in my thinking process. We call it smart trade networks, we call it digital trade networks, we call it digital ecosystems. Because what this enables you to do is to track and trace data, not just on the product that flows through it, but on every aspect of the ecosystem that you can map in the process to enhance value for all the stakeholders in that ecosystem. So if you can just go to the next slide, please. Can you hear me? Manola? Hello? Hello? Can you go to the next slide?
I can hear you on Teams.
Just the next slide, Bonolo. So the idea of blockchain, and we've listened to a lot of user case studies now, and you know, I've done quite a bit of this over the last 5 to 8 years, and you know, there's, you know, whether it's wine, whether it's the halal sector, whether it's the mining sector, you know, the question is, you know, how can we integrate the majority of South Africans into this digital ecosystem or this digital economy that's so fast evolving that if you consider the last 1,000 years of technology advancement, is that those who own the factories, though the elite classes, they become more and more wealthier at the expense of the masses. And right at the start of the fourth industrial revolution, we are seeing this and we are observing it everywhere. I mentioned Google, I mentioned Facebook, I mentioned Apple, I mentioned NVIDIA. You know, these guys are the digital, they're the new data colonists. They're the new, class of people that are using our data that we give to them for free and becoming exceptional wealthy. I mentioned Capitec Bank. Another example was Pick n Pay. Pick n Pay, most of you would know, was almost bankrupt a few months ago. They listed Boxer. Boxer is their second economy retailer. Overnight, they raised 8.4 billion rand to take Pick n Pay out of its financial troubles. So the importance of, you know, understanding how digital tools can enable South Africans, or the majority of South Africans, to begin to participate effectively in the future digital economy is what's the essence, for me at least, what we must do and understand about these technologies. So what I was referring to earlier on was these digital ecosystems, these smart trade networks. And what we've developed here in the Cape is a core technology integration framework where we integrate a few technologies from IoT where the data is generated, blockchain where the data is being stored in, AI where the data is being processed, and then ERPs where the data is being administrated and managed to have some strategic advantages. But, and this is the thing that I resonate with the CSIR with earlier, There are 75,000, more or less, white commercial farmers in this country. And there are 2.5 million black smallholder farmers in this country. And Ishmael, he gave a statistic where if you have 2.5 million smallholder farmers and they contribute less than 2% of the GDP that agriculture as a whole contribute to the GDP of the country, then we have a major, major problem. If there are 2.5 million black farmers that can become commercially viable in a manner that they could supply Woolworths, they can supply Checkers, they can supply Food Lovers Market. Food Lovers Market is an interesting challenge where Woolworths and Pick n Pay has 1 to 2% of their turnover attributed to fruit and veg. In the case of Food Lovers Market, it's between 40 and 60%. And when we approached Food Lovers Market, who's headquartered here in the Cape, they had only one condition. They said to me, if you can design a blockchain solution where we can track and trace our ESG KPIs in terms of from the soil all the way through till by our shelves, we'll buy all the produce from every smallholder all over the country. And we did that, right? We designed something called the Food Co-op. We incorporated into that digital cooperatives of smallholder farmers from everywhere. We worked with a government institution in the Cape called Casidra. We signed an MOU with Food Lovers Market to buy all the produce. And we could demonstrate how we could convert a smallholder supply chain into an ecosystem that tracks and traces data on ESG, but also we could provide data for government when it comes to funding this. When it comes to government funding to supply smallholder farmers and their supply chain. So the idea is that, and this is, after having spent 8 years building these kind of things, I've learned one thing. Don't sell the technology. Only sell the problem you solve. And think about a future South Africa where we could use these technologies by converting supply chains into digital ecosystems to demonstrate how this future South African economy may look like when we actually integrate the formal and informal economies, but not transform the formal economy only, because that's never going to work. So we've got papers, we've got presentations, we've got proof of concepts that I have, that I could have spoken about, but I wanted to use a different angle to demonstrate that it is important to design these technologies with the user in mind, the end user in mind. And that when it comes to the design of feasibility of these systems, that the positioning and the placement of these end users is crucial. Otherwise, the adoption and application rate would continue to be extremely low. In a nutshell, thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. You there?
Thank you, Enzo. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Thank you. You did say that your aim was to take this turn this conference on its head, and I think you did that because we did shift a little bit from, right? I think we can agree, right? So thank you so much for that very, very, very important aspect of blockchain. I think you're bridging an important gap about our economy. It's a very important conversation we're having. So, but because of time constraints, we're going to end. We're not going to go into the question and answer session. And again, you are more than welcome to write your questions. That is why we encourage you guys to join us on our social media platforms or at our office, or take our email address as ujblockchain@uj.ac.za. Write all of your questions. We will have them answered. So once again, Ansel, thank you so much. We appreciate you. A round of applause for Ansel. Okay. We're going into the last item of the day before the big lunch. I know you guys are excited, right? So you're going to do me a favor, because this one is a little bit longer than you're going to stand up a little bit just to stretch. You have to humor me, I know what I'm saying. So stand up, please. Just a second, just for 1 second. Just stretch, breathe in, breathe in. Yeah, I like that stretch, good. Yeah, just 30 seconds, take a breath. No, don't leave, please, don't. That's not what I'm talking about. Just breathe a little, stretch your neck, your arms. Breathe in and out, and I think we're all good to go, right? Are we fine? Or you want a second? Okay. Then I think we can all sit down. Thank you so much for humoring me. We're going into the last session. Okay, just a second so that you can settle down. We're going into the last agenda for the day, and this one is our panel discussion, okay? So it's a little bit lengthy. That's why I did ask you guys to stretch. In today's panel discussion, we're going to be exploring how blockchain is transforming product flow, information flow, and financial infrastructure across the Southern African and African supply chains. So it is my pleasure to welcome my distinguished panelists. The first on the list is Ms. Genevieve Leville, who will be, she's going to be attending virtually. And then Mr. Shadrack Kubiani, who is the tech lead at ePharma. A round of applause for Mr. Following him is Ms. Preeti Kubiani, who is his wife, by the way, and CEO of Coronet Blockchain. You see? Thank you so much. And then the third, also joining us virtually, is Mr. Anzil Adams, CEO of Data Ledger. A round of applause for him. The third, the last is Mr. Blake Player, Chief Commercial Officer at, well, I think he left, right? I did see him leave. Okay, that's okay. And last but not least, round of applause for Ms. Bonolo Moraka, who's the moderator for this session. Thank you. Please, another round of applause as we welcome our panelists. Do you want me to move your chair closer? No, it's fine. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would love to. A very good afternoon, everyone. Are we not glad to be here, to be gaining the knowledge and actually knowing what is going on in the industry, right? And I'm very glad to have ePharma with us. So, did I say good morning or did I say good afternoon? Because we've been here. Yes, so a very good afternoon to all those joining us online also. I know we are live also on YouTube, and then there's also other people on Teams. Welcome to today's panel discussion, which will focus on blockchain across South Africa's supply chains. So this discussion forms part of the annual media event that's organized by the South Africa-Switzerland Bilateral Research Chair in Blockchain Technology at the University of Johannesburg. And my name is Bonolo Moraka, for those who missed it, and I will merely be a vessel guiding today's discussion. So to be honest, I'm both excited and I'm also a little worried at the same time because I'm worried because I don't think we have enough time to cover the amount of questions that we have. And I'm also excited because I know there's going to be a lot of learning. So right now on stage we have Mr. Shadrack Kubanye and Mrs. Preeti Kubanye, as Mr. Makazo mentioned. Ms. Preeti Kubanye is the co-founder and tech lead of ePharma app, and then Mr. Shadrack is the co-founder also and CEO of ePharma app. This is, you can find their online home on ePharma.africa. That's EFAMA.africa. If you want more information, there's also a stand outside. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. You can get more information about what ePharma does. Because if I was to take time to speak about their accolades and what they've done, we'll be here until sunset. So without any wasting any further ado, Online, we also have Ansel Adams and Miss Genevieve Leviel, who are joining us. So every panelist on the stage has built something real. It's not on white paper. It's not a proof of concept. It's not sitting on a server somewhere, but a working platform that real farmers, real businesses, and real consumers are using today. I want to start there with what is actually working before we get to what still needs to change. So, in one sentence, I will start with the Kubanyas, for eFarmer. I will ask, what problem does your platform solve that nothing else could solve before blockchain existed? This will go for eFarmer, this will go for AgriLedger, and this will also go for Data Ledger. So I will start with eFarmer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. So the initial problem we went on to solve, because we were both raised by farmers, well, obviously from different families, was access to market. But we quickly realized that farmer issues are really so layered. Before a buyer can press order, there's onboarding, there's verification, there's a training for farmer readiness, there's digital training to use digital tools. So we build tools to manage everything that happens before a sales happen and after the sales has happened.
Thank you very much. This was about 2 years ago at the University of Pretoria, where the now Dr. Laurie Dippenaar, as a very seasoned banker, was being conferred a PhD. And was asked in a speech to summarize the learnings across his 4 decades, that's 40 years, of a banking career. And you'll see what it has to do with blockchain and our journey. He summarized 40 years only in 4 words. He said when he looks in his rearview mirror, the last 40 years of his life, his journey, his passion, and him building First Rand Bank, which you know as FNB, and the assets in between. He said only 4 words summarize his journey. Great communicator. He said, innovative ideas, and traditional values. That's it. So, what did that have to do with us? Blockchain technology, before its arrival and before its debut or it going mainstream and it ending up in our hands, these villagers that are trying out what blockchain can do for Africa, for farming. Before that, trade was happening. However, because of traditional ideas and innovation meeting traditional ideas, certain things will never go out of fashion. Trust, our dear moderator, is one of those things. Trust is not going out of fashion. So when blockchain arrived, it took us back to our village beginnings, where we both experienced on the Eastern Cape and near the Palapala farm where I grew up, we both experienced bartering. Can I exchange your gift bag for my phone? Is there value there? But I trust you. How do I know you? How do I get the information about what's in the gift bag? That's what happen in a village. So blockchain arrives, eFarmer arrives, just to utilize blockchain to simplify that conversation so that it can happen online, we can take it offline. However, whether from a farm to the fork, or from the farm to your table, or from the farm to your dorm room, whatever data sets and the touch points and the many hands that touch your food, including the food you just ate, we became privy that while we are giving the farmer access to you, we shall honor the age-old principle, thou shalt keep the buyer alive. So blockchain helped us to play that team sport very well, because trust, when trust leaves the room, trade also follows. When trust is not on stage, trade won't be on stage. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So that was what are the problems that eFarmer is currently solving. So if you can move to our virtual guest, Genevieve, can you please let us know what, in one sentence, what AgriLedger solves?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So to me, What I thought more of AgriLedger is it was to prove that the concept could happen, because we started the journey in 2018. And in my point of view, the most important thing and the most easiest thing for everybody to understand is food. Because if you don't have food, you die. That's it. And if you're not eating, you're usually in a coma, which means you're being fed intravenously. So it was about proving that the technology, and as was just told about by the e-Pharma group, it's about creating trust. We have broken trust now because of the fact that we have greater distance to go. And by taking technology that exists, and it's not just blockchain, it's many things, we can now prove where things come from and who has been participating in it, and making sure that everybody has an equitable distribution for their work.
Thank you. And Anzil, if you can also come through and let us know what problem does data ledgers serve or help with, that before blockchain, there wasn't anything that could solve it.
In a post-COVID market environment, consumers want to know where what they consume originate from. They want to have peace of mind that what they are eating is actually what they are eating. So when we track and trace verified data, we can capture that in on-product gateways in the form of dynamic QR codes. People can scan and they can trace the origin of the project, the product all the way back, to the soil. Another thing that is important, especially for smallholder farmers, is that the verified data on their processes can now be packaged so that they can have, access to better financial products. And lastly, the biggest thing I think that blockchain is achieving, besides all the other stuff we were talking about, is the concept of disintermediation. Taking the middleman out of the equation and putting the smallholder farmer in direct contact with the retailer is one of the biggest challenges that we can overcome. That includes banks as well. So it is about the end consumer having peace of mind, and it is about empowering the smallholder farmer in such a way that they can make more money, and that the focus is more on them than on the middleman, because that's the kind of economy we must begin to eradicate.
Thank you, Anzil. So I can say the keywords from all the answers that our panelists shared is trust and provenance. Provenance builds trust because our consumers will know exactly what they're consuming is coming from. So now moving on, Shadrach, e-Pharma is connecting smallholder farmers directly to markets, right? What happens to the e-farmers, what happens to the farmers' income rather, and bargaining power when that supply chain becomes transparent and traceable on blockchain?
Thank you so much. Thanks for the question, Bonolo. Before I answer that question, let me send a shout out or acknowledgement to one of our very latest farmers that is in the room, Farmer Zenzile at the front. Thank you. Thank you. We actually spent a day with her at a farm in Soshanguve, where she's looking after a poultry operation, working hard at it since 2015. So in terms of what changes when blockchain arrives, what changes when we arrive and we demystify or bring traceability, two things. The first one is participation, and the second one is inclusion. When it comes to South Africa, we are home to 2.3 million farmers. However, only 40,000 of those actually have a sustained contract with retail market. 40,000 out of 2.3 million. The others are just winging it and farming and hoping that their produce or their livestock will be sold. So the participation is that before we vilify big buyers, the big buyers are not excluding the farming community or the smallholder farmers merely because they are being wicked or they are kind of like being difficult. Sometimes a big buyer, for practical reasons, would rather deal with one big giant commercial farmer that parks his private jets at Nambo annually, whether whether Cape Town or Bothaville, rather than deal with 200 or 2,000 smallholder farmers. Way too much admin, way too much costs, and way too much communication. If farmer comes along, and because we are children of villages, the word aggregation, we read to hear it from university. We always aggregated. We always, something in native language, unkazata, where you come together, you put monies together, and we can buy what's not purchasable if it's Bunolo alone facing that purchase. Or maybe this part of the room might be at OR Tambo, and they realize that all the flights are grounded, and they make a call to Learjet and say, can you send us a private jet? Because we are a bunch of people. You may be surprised, that's how Virgin Airlines started. So aggregation is not just for the airline business. On our application, in our platform, in our infrastructure, we unlock participation by smallholder farmers by enabling this funny thing in blockchain called the peer-to-peer economy. We make it practical. If one order is worth 100 tons and one farmer could not fulfill that minimum order quantity, or in the case of Farmer Zenzile, they don't want 40 chickens, they don't want 400 chickens, they actually want 10,000 chickens every week. Our infrastructure is able to aggregate her. Instead of her being excluded, we are able to aggregate her with other farmers in Soshanguve and in her vicinity, so that that peer-to-peer economy can help them to step up together and through a team sport enabled by the infrastructure to fulfill that order, fulfill the quality spec, fulfill the buyer expectations. And the second part, of course, is financial inclusion. You know, the banking sector can seem like they are hostile towards Farmer Zenzile or the other farmers, because when she comes through, she knows her business, she's been at it since 2015, but most of her data may not be digitized, may not be traceable, may not be locked under lock and key. It may live on her physical ledger, it may live in her head, it may live in file 13 somewhere in the cabinet, on a farm somewhere in between the bushes. Now comes eFarmer, we are able to elevate her banking conversation. She actually needs a bigger poultry farm right now. Now that she's here, I'll utilize that. She needs a bigger poultry farm. She's got a vision. She's talking to a couple of funders. Now that she's been welcomed into eFarmer, we give about 3 months, 6 months, our ledger of truth and our decentralized ledger will give her an elevated conversation with bankers that's no longer hostile, where they say, can you put up collateral? Can you give us property? Can you give us a trust? What's your portfolio? When she doesn't have those due to being previously disadvantaged, our ledger of truth equips her with traceable references, traceable trade. You see, trust and trade and traceability. When she's equipped with that, she pulls up a file, she sits down with the banker and says, I may not have 100-hectare property to live with you as security. However, ask eFarmer, look at this report. These are the volumes I've done in the last 6 months, and it's not eFarmer's word against mine or yours. These are digitally traceable, and they're decentralized. She can tell the banker, you can take this data to the bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that in-depth. And also, this is real life experiences that eFarmer solving. Here is a real farmer that you are seeing that is actually working on this. So that's what we want to see, and that's what we want to hear, and that's why we are here today also. So, Genevieve, I'm going to move to you regarding AgriLedger's mission to shift power towards the farmer, right? So in practical terms, what does that actually look like when a smallholder farmer interacts with your platform for the first time?
It's actually what is done, and this is what I was speaking about. This is not about removing people who are participating in that. We had engineers and also people who would onboard them. So it could be even that it's the word juice is not enough coffee today. But it could be that it's the co-op which does the upload onboarding, because there are information. So one of the things that I found very interesting with what Ansel and the other team are talking about, the ePharma team are talking about, is the fact that we need to have data on that person. And being able to have the correct data is one of the questions that we need to be able to do to them. We always assume that people have to be in technology, that they have to be interacting with the technology. This is about the technology serving them. So by serving them, we go and we ask them the information, upload it, make sure it is them. So in ways, this is creating their digital presence with their support. And then that allows for the system to provide information to them, which is relevant, such as the goods got sold. This is what you should be doing. These are the tips that you should have. And obviously, at the beginning, they need a lot of support. This is actually a very good job for youth. And in Haiti, we started employing youth to sort of work with them with the technology to sort of enable them and make sense of what they were seeing. And what that allows you to do is to have people who normally would not be able to participate, have technology serve them. So I think that what we always assume, because it's blockchain and everybody has a smartphone. I remember when I came, I hope it's no longer the same, but when I first came to South Africa, I remember people having two devices, one which was a smartphone and one which was what we call a dumb phone. But basically, this is, for me, an issue, because in places they have to go and get that. I don't know about you guys, but my smartphone doesn't last a day of power. So that's not something that is very feasible for a farmer. They don't need it all the time. We send information to them. Registering, do they need to see their information? It could be because part of the information we're putting is what is the household made up of, how many children. So if there's a change, there's somebody in the community who can work with them to sort of be able to bring that in place. And for me, I think it's very important, mostly when we start thinking about some of the issues that have gone on in terms of people losing their land. Obviously, right now, but not many locations in Africa are prime for hotels and things like that. But that's changing. When we had the tsunami in Thailand, one of the things that happened is farmers who were farming on the beachfront had to evacuate. When they came back, the land was no longer theirs. So part of the data that we were capturing was not only where is this farmer, who is this farmer, but where are they actually doing their tolls. Many a time we know in many, in the US and in Europe, you have very good land registry. In many places in the world, the cadastre is a disaster. So how do you relate somebody to say this is where they have been living, this is where they've been working for the last 30 years, so that what happened in Thailand is a farmer who had been on this land for 30 years came back, and now that land had been sold to a hotel.
Thank you, Genevieve. I think what we are taking from what Shadrach earlier spoke about and what Genevieve is saying, it's the data, and this data will ensure that there's traceability in what these farmers are working on. So now, moving on, Preeti, Coronet blockchain, I now know that it serves as the underlying blockchain infrastructure powering ePharma. As a tech lead, what does it mean in practice to build a trust layer that an agricultural supply chain platform sits on top of?
Thank you so much. So currently we have about over 6,000 buyers. Some of them are big buyers, some of them are small buyers. But all of them, they've got 3 trust issues they actually bring up with us every time we speak with them. First, farmers. They want to know, does this farmer actually exist? Are they qualified or experienced to grow the food they're going to sell to people? Who verify the information? Can we even trust it? Second, they want to know that the farm itself, is it compliant with food handling, how we grow food? Does it have standard operating system? Does it hire miners or undocumented people that actually work there. And lastly is the provenance of the product itself. They want to know like what went into the food. Some of the suppliers we work with, they even go as far as prescribing to tell farmers to say, these are the suppliers you only can get your seed and fertilizers from for your product to qualify to the spec that we are actually looking for. And now if you have like maybe 5 farmers or 10 farmers, you can manage all of that manually. But what happens when you have 10,000 farmers, when you have 100,000 farmers? How do you manage what everybody is actually doing? So that's where the supply chain, the blockchain technology actually comes in, not to replace all the processes or the people, to actually digitize everything and make sure we have one source of truth. From the farmers to the buyers, everything happens in one source of truth when the technology is actually involved. And I think on my side as a tech lead is to always making sure that we could be using the most complicated version of blockchain or the cloud technology. My job is to make sure this thing has to be easy to be used, because farmers are not looking for the latest technology. They are looking to say, I still need to do what I have to do. Farmers need to farm. They can't spend now 80% of their time learning tech, doing administration and everything just because the buyer has got a certain expectation. So using tech, making it seamless to solve the problems that everybody is solving is one of my responsibilities.
I'm not sure if we have a lot of developers in here for us to get a round of applause. Because that just touched on the application being user-friendly to even a non-tech individual, right? So I would like to encourage everyone to please jot down your questions as they come to mind. We will have an opportunity for audience engagement later in the session, and we would also love to hear your thoughts. For those who may have joined us recently, this is the media event organized by the South Africa-Switzerland Bilateral Research Chain Blockchain Technology at the University of Johannesburg, and today we are exploring the role of blockchain in supply chains. We are joined by Genevieve Levele of Agriledger and Anzil Adams of Data Ledger, Shadrach and Priti Kubanye of eFarmer app, and I am Bonolo Mraga, your moderator for today's discussion. So let's continue the discussion. So I'm going to spread the pressure evenly and ask everyone to answer this next coming question, right? So let me just get my life in order. So, who is the hardest person to convince to adopt blockchain? Is it the farmer, is it the buyer, or the regulator? And as I mentioned, this goes for every panelist. We won't get one answer from eFarmer. We want everyone's opinion on this one.
So we haven't had challenges because I love what Enzo said, don't sell blockchain, sell the solution. So people don't have a problem whether they're using AI or blockchain as long as it solves their problem. So for buyers and for farmers, this actually not the hardest to do. I think in terms of regulation, when you have systems that you invested like billions to build and somebody comes in and say, here's a new thing, here's a new way of doing things, like we still have to break even on the thing that we have built in the past. So they have a different problem that they are solving because they're not the ones who are driving at 3 a.m. to Joburg Market only to be told in 5 days that your produce was not sold, so we are destroying it, you're not gonna get any money. Actually give us money so that we can go and destroy it. So they're not sitting with those problems. They're just sitting with say, we've built assets, we're not going to dispose them for the new thing just because you say it actually works better.
Thank you so much. So 3 things come to mind. The first one is a Porsche. The second one is my late gran, who was a farmer herself, a coffee farmer in the middle of South Africa. And of course, the third one that comes to mind is the money market. What that has to do with the question and who's the hardest to convince? Do you know, I heard about Satoshi, and you probably did as well. I heard about the white paper, I heard about blockchain, crypto, blockchain. But do you know who's the very first ever person that I ever encountered, or rather I spoke with, who said, I am using it. Long before we ended up in blockchain, we were in consulting, and then we were finding our feet in technology. It's actually my late gran, who was in her late 70s. I was trying to send her money, and for her birthday. I said, so Gran, how do we do this one? What do you want? Do you want a cash send? Do you want this? What's most convenient for you? Or shall I just put it in your bank? She said, no. I'm going to send you a long thingy. That's my Bitcoin wallet. And I go like, no. This can't be. I go like, this can't be. Say that again. She said, no. You see what's happening is I will get all of it if you send it through this route. But then I had to later call her after we utilized that route. So she gave us a crash course, She gave Makoti a crash course on how to actually use that wallet. But later we asked her, how did you come about that? Because we didn't associate you with either the crypto movement or blockchain. She said, it's easy. In Africa, most of you guys, she's referring to us, you the youth, you always talk about financial literacy. As though, by the way, before she was in farming, she was a unionist. You speak about financial literacy to educate us, the gogos, us, the grannies. She said, no, you don't have to educate us. If we see value in something, we shall discuss it at the society, we'll discuss it at church, we'll crack the code, we'll figure it out, because there's money behind this lock and key. So financial literacy is every other thing that doesn't help us financially. Maybe it's a nice conversation you can have in Santen while you are eating croissant. But if you're telling us there's money here, we and as goggles will figure it out during our Stockfell conversation. We'll figure this thing out. So the hardest person to convince is if you were to sell blockchain to them. Don't sell blockchain. Solve what keeps the person awake, whether the buyer or the farmer. Pour over what keeps them awake. The same goes with the political innovation that our previous speaker spoke about. They said innovation is political. Do you know when innovation becomes political? If you didn't factor in all the comrades that are involved in that equation, the other comrades are not on the organogram. They are off the organogram. They are leading this organization from behind the scenes, from a whiskey dialogue somewhere. If you don't know they exist and how much power they have on that organogram, they're going to shut you down. So factor out who they are. Visit them and tell them, I'm from UJ, I'm a student, we did this 3D thing here. We're not trying to get your buy-in. We know that we are not priests. We are not asking you whether you are a good person or a bad person. But we know this thing is broken, and part of it being broken, off the record, it feeds you. Part of it remaining broken, you are eating. But don't worry, we ran the numbers. You will eat bigger and better with us if we fix it. And that's how you solve politics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shadrach. Anzil, can you also answer from Data Ledger's point of view to say who is the hardest person to convince to adopt blockchain? I understand Preeti and Shadrach have been answering their answers from your point of view, so I'm intrigued to hear what you're going to say.
Yeah, my experience was with formal economy CEOs and middle managers, predominantly white. And the problem with digitalization is that it is often a change management strategy. And when CEOs and middle managers don't understand digitalization, which is astoundingly quite high in industries in the formal economy, they resist it. They don't understand outcomes. They don't understand anything that challenges their understanding of their current role in their organizations, which is why, we got to learn not to sell technology, but to sell the problem we solve and be strategic about that from a change management perspective and how to enable value add in the process. It's also the main reason, why my PhD research is around agentic inequality and understanding that unequal access to AI agents actually sustains the economic divide between the formal and informal economies. And that, my focus has shifted away from corporate to say, well, in the formal economy, resources are dwindling anyway. these businesses will not be able to survive in the next 5 years unless there's a strategy to engage the informal sector. So let's shift blockchain to where the cash is, and let's come up with health solutions, let's come up with agri solutions, let's come up with economic solutions, education solutions that needs AI, blockchain integration, and that minimizes resistance because it's designed and developed in a feasible manner that includes the lived experience of marginalized communities. And so that's been my lesson. And that's what's driving predominantly my research at a PhD level at the moment. Unless, there was an old saying, you either adopt or you die. And, change management, digitalization goes hand in hand. So, it's been a very expensive lesson, but it's a lesson that I think we understand more than anything else.
Thank you, Ansel. Genevieve, can you please take it from here?
Yes, so the first thing is I'm hoping for the day when we no longer talk about the technology. And as Ansel said, it's about the solutions. I do think that, however, because we're still mirrored in the technology and what it may be able to do, one of the key stakeholders that we have to engage, some of them are engaging themselves on their own, is really the government. Because government's role is here to protect the population, to protect in ways. The challenge that we've had is many people hear about blockchain and they hear crypto, they hear Bitcoin, and we have seen the littered street with this, which people losing money. So we have to educate the government so they understand what exactly we're trying to do. And because these systems will not be successful unless we have a certain mechanism by which to move money. We are looking at mechanism by which we can also have stable coin. Like when I did the project, what we did was kind of like a stable coin because we were keeping the value that was eventually going to be delivered. Now there is actually a recognition, and I think the movement in Africa is huge when you look at the policies which are coming out in South Africa. Ghana has digital asset, and Kenya just also talked about that. So all these things are probably going to be definitely a mechanism by which we are going to create better flow of money. And for me, trade need not be to trade across Africa. And part of the challenge has been, how do you get money? The FCAT, and that's not working yet for some reason. And I think with blockchain technology, looking at that financial aspect, we're going to see more adoption. So first thing is, let's not talk about the technology the same way I don't talk about SSL and how email flows and da-da-da-da. I just know that the email works because I need to send it to somebody and they receive it. So if we can get to that level, where is it actually? What are use cases which is needed? But fundamentally, working with our governments is very important so they understand what actually is being delivered.
Thanks, Genevieve. So one word that I keep hearing is, the government it just keeps appearing in this conversation. So as it's either appearing as a funder or as a regulator or as a potential user, what is the one thing that government needs to do right now to accelerate blockchain adoption in South African supply chains? And I'm going to ask this to both you, Shadrach, and Preeti.
Thank you kindly. Start with the government. Great question, Bernardo. Who is the government? or what is the government? You know, sometimes within an academic context, and marketplace context or business, it's tempting to think that government is the other people. Government is Cape Town and Pretoria, Union Building. We will be at Union Building in 2 weeks. However, before I respond in terms of what government's obligations and what's in the best interest, if government mechanizes what must be mechanized in the right direction for the betterment of all, I need to revisit government. Very coincidentally, our newly welcomed farmer is in the chicken business. You know who was the government when I was growing up? It was not Pretoria. It was not Cape Town. The government was the person who was deciding which piece of chicken is going to be eaten by who. Let's be practical. Maybe some of you did not go through that trauma. But I always get that other piece. Why do I always get that piece nobody wants? Can this government in this house, how is it always favoring the voters? What about me, the non-voter? What is happening? No. You see, these older ones, they're about to work in Joburg, so they will send money home. So we need to give them the best pieces. So that there is government 101. So before we vilify that other government, we leave to the government in the house. Some of us had to go to therapy, you see, to recover from, why do I always get the head of chicken? What is this thing? Oh, this other wishbone, a bone that doesn't make sense, a bone nobody wants. So now, let me tell you the bone that nobody wants. Before technology, we were in the mining space, consulting. In the mining space, there's something economically, or economists, they call it the mineral curse. You know what's a mineral curse? 101, break it down. The mineral curse is on this stage, existing above so much mineral deposits, but we are as broke as hell, us that live above the mineral deposits. That may be the story of DRC. That may be the story of certain parts of South Africa. The communities that were gifted divinely to exist above minerals, they are so broke and they are going through economic crisis after another. What that has to do with the government today? Do you know what's the looming or upcoming crisis right now in South Africa when it comes to this question? 2, AI and talent. We are about to go through in SA or in Africa, we are about to go through either a talent curse or an AI curse. Us, as South Africans, if the government doesn't act fast, we will end up with the chicken piece we don't want. So the government better be listening. I know some of them will consume some of the insights from Prof. Namdi's ecosystem. The government has to act fast so that we as Africa and as SSA, we don't just remain the most youthful population on the continent, the most skilled, the most qualified. But when it comes to who decides what we earn, that is decided elsewhere on another continent that I won't mention. When it comes to deciding which tokens or which access is decided for AI, we don't get the AI parts that turn us into consumers, but we need AI tools, blockchain tools that makes us producers. Because if you don't produce, at the dinner table, we'll always get the incorrect chicken piece. Accessing of policy, will in investing in the youth, will in investing in SMEs. There's a number of startups that are coming up in this very blockchain research unit. The government has to come to the party, not just to talk and look at the 3D printed house. They have to bring their checkbooks, they have to bring their lawmakers, or else, not just us as the youth, but the government itself will end up, one, with an egg on the face, or with a chicken piece we all don't want.
Thank you so much, Fanola. I think we so much aligned in this panel that everything that I was going to say, because as a tech lead, the one who decide on the technical talent and the implementation of the technologies, the majority of the things really that I was going to say, my biggest concern is the talent, because we are lagging really, really behind when it comes to getting good quality engineers, and it's expensive to acquire this kind of qualification. So I think I'll just stop it there because Shadrach has really covered everything.
Happy wife, happy life, eh?
Bonolo, can I respond?
You can answer.
May I just say, firstly, it is not the South African government's role to create jobs. I want you to hear what I'm saying. The South African government, it's not their job to create employment in this country. It is, however, their job to create an enabling environment for job creation. And when you understand that the world is digital, we're in a digital economy, it therefore must become the government's priority to create an enabling environment for the creation of digital jobs. Because the definition, the very definition of viability is the ability to adjust faster than the rate of change in the environment you're operating in. And if the environment we are operating in is digital and we still think analogous, then we have a problem in this country where our economy will no longer be viable and no longer be sustainable in the next 5 years. So by way of a practical example, and this is for you, Jay, Prof, for you in particular, and Bonono, for you guys to have a look at, there is this thing called LITS, LITS, South Africa. It stands for Livestock Identification Traceability System. In 2022, Data Ledger with Queen's University of Technology wrote an entire blockchain framework to operationalize and digitalize the livestock identification traceability system in South Africa that will govern an industry that's worth billions and billions of rands annually. We engaged the University of Pretoria, we engaged strategic key players. We wrote a position paper of world quality to explain to government and the industry how to operationalize, digitalize LITS by using blockchain. This is 2022. This is almost 5 years ago. They have not looked at it. They have not come back to us. They haven't understood it. And most of these guys who made the decision was white Afrikaner CEOs, white Afrikaner middle managers, and government officials that had no understanding of what digitalization is. We even addressed it in a way that we could understand how to transform the entire Eastern Cape economy by digitalizing and implementing a digitalized LITS framework to create digital co-ops with cattle farmers in the Eastern Cape, a virtual identity of a feedlot, and an export route that's integrated with an entire halal supply chain, digital supply chain, into the EU. I spent time at the Dubai Blockchain Center. The conversations were all over. The understanding of government to create a digital ecosystem, to create an enabling environment for digitalization lacks. It is telling because the previous AI policy was revoked because they designed it with fake AI references. They're now in the process to rewrite it. How can a South African government, how can a country like South Africa, who dominated the African continent's economy for such a long time, how can it afford the withdrawal of an AI framework, policy framework, because other consultants use fake AI references to write the policy? Where is the actual people? Where are the second economy stakeholders? Where are the universities that advise these people on how to do this? So government's role is not to create jobs. Government's role is to create an enabling environment for sustainable job creation. And sustainability is no longer vested in an apartheid design economy that cannot be transformed to become sustainable. It can no longer sustain us. This economy that can't get jobs, this economy that the trade unions are fighting against, this economy that can't provide jobs for our graduates has been failing since the mid-80s. It can no longer sustain South Africa. What needs to happen is that we as stakeholders come together and understand what this enabling environment must look like so that the practical experience of digitalization can be executed. Like, for example, remember the word livestock identification traceability system. It is the biggest opportunity to demonstrate how blockchain technology can demonstrate the integration of the formal and informal economy to create substantial wealth, extract substantial value, and actually design new jobs that currently does not exist.
Thank you so much, Ansel. I can tell you for free that what you just said was thought-provoking because of the out here.
remember this word, EJ, remember this word, and we've written this document. We've written this document in 2022, a global document on how to digitalize LITs, how to use blockchain to create a digital ecosystem to deploy LITs. LITs is about beck and close here, mouth and foot disease. It's costing the industry billions and billions of rands, with thousands of jobs that are being threatened. The industry stakeholders, the white guys, the Afrikaner boys, shot this thing down. And this is what you need to understand. You need to understand how to sell the problem you solve and how to take the opportunity away from the established commercial farmers and focus it on the development of 2.5 million smallholder farmers that can irrevocably change the economy in South Africa and take the lessons and deploy it across the African continent.
We can all agree, that there is so much to digest from the conversation that we are having today, and there's only so much little time, So now I'm running a very strict program. I've been asking my panelists questions. Now this is a question that is posed to each one of you in the room. South Africa often looks to Europe or the US for technology benchmarks, right? But Genevieve's work in Haiti and what the CSIR is doing with Elima suggests that Africa is actually ahead in some of these applications, right? So does that mean we underestimate what Africa has already built? Do we underestimate what Africa has already built? So that is a question to each one of us right now. But in closing, with my panelists, I'm going to go around with this one to say, if this panel was to reconvene in 5 years, what is the one thing that you hope has changed about how blockchain is used in South African supply chains? And I'm going to start this one with Genevieve. I understand you're not necessarily in the South African terrain, but if this panel was to reconvene in 5 years, what is the one thing that you hope has changed about how blockchain is used in the South African supply chains?
So actually, we didn't talk much about this, but the WTO is actually building a blockchain solution. And if you remember last April, not this year, the year before, there was the whole tariff issue with the US. And what came out was that it was no longer about bilateral trade, but it was about multilateral trade. So I hope in 5 years, we're not talking about the technology, but how the solutions are evolving and what are we able to do and how we're able to uplift. One of the biggest challenges that South Africa and the SACO region had was, if we recall, Lesotho was on top of that list at 50%. Well, the reality was Lesotho was buying equipment via SACO through South Africa to bring. So the trade imbalance that showed on paper was not the real trade imbalance, because once the equipment came in from the US, it stopped in South Africa and it was pushed. So with this technology, we have the ability to understand full life cycle and full movement of goods and services. And that's what I hope in 5 years. We're talking about the improvement that we're able to make with not AI, because for me, AI is not secure. Data that is on chain can be used for AI to help make decision. So let's push, so what's been talked about a lot is about blockchain and AI. is not there. And I hope in 5 years we're really there and we're making a difference.
Thanks, Genevieve. Anzil?
In 5 years, I'll be 65. And over the next 5 years, my sole quest is to understand how the conversion of supply and value chains into digital ecosystems will make us understand how we can integrate the formal and informal economy using digital tools like blockchain and AI to create an emergent digital South African economy that can create sustainable jobs going forward. The only way we are going to address the poverty, unemployment, inequality nexus in South Africa is if we begin to think about problem solving in the now and no longer design policies to resolve the past. I think I've earned the right to say that as a political activist in the 80s. We fought for the Freedom Charter and has been stupendously disappointed in what has happened the last 30 years. But we have to take the insight of what failed, like, for example, transforming a failing apartheid-designed economy that can never create sustainability, and understand how those lessons can inform us in terms of how we can address and solve the complexity in marginalized communities to drive the establishment of a new digital economy going forward. And that's what I'm committing myself to. That's what my doctorate is about. That is what my experience of the last 7-8 years in blockchain space is all about. And that's what I'm gearing for. That's what I'm hoping to see. And hopefully UJ will offer me a lecture job to help you attain this. That's just being funny. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Anzil.
Thank you so much, Manolo. So as the country, we're still solving really basic problem. Before we can even think about launching things into space, we're still begging to feed people. Food is the most basic problem we should have solved by now. And I wish in 5 years we could have solved problems like food security. When one thing about food security, you may think that we're not producing enough food, which is not true in South Africa. We're actually producing enough food to feed everybody. We produce about more than 30 million tons of food. 10 million tons is lost every year. That's enough food to feed like 20 million people. For the whole year, everybody can have 3 meals a day. But tonight, we're going to have 15 million people that live in this country that are going to go to bed without dinner. Not because there's no food, but because the supply chain and the value chain that brings food to the people that need the food the most is broken. Not far from our office, because one may argue to say maybe they can't afford to buy food. Not far from our offices, there's JSE-listed companies that are spending about 50 billion every year on CSI, ESG initiatives. 54% of that 50 billion is spent on food initiatives. But the thing is, everybody is doing their thing there in that side, in silos and everywhere. We even ran a program where we called it the Food Fund, where we brought in a mining company, an NGO, and a farmer to just experiment what would have happened if all these guys were in the same place, where CSI is actually spent on one platform, where then is given to an NGO who then buy directly from the farmer. And the farmer that was involved in that pilot program grew by 300% in revenue. They hired double the staff they were hiring. The NGO moved from feeding 2 meals to 4 meals because now they're buying directly from the farmer. The food is actually cheaper. The entire reports were real time, so the corporate could receive their report without even talking to the NGO. At the end of that pilot, the corporate mining company moved from sponsoring about 20 students to sponsoring 60 students, just because the system was so transparent. Everything was happening in one platform, and now it was not even 100,000 or 1,000 people that were being fed. And exploring how can that actually work when technology can bring people in one place to solve the most basic human right issues like having a meal before you go back to bed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof, for your hospitality. Thank you for your incredible facilitation and keeping those questions coming. Your last question is really a tough one because it's reminding me of two things. It's reminding me of a certain book. I'll recommend it to each of you. Even if you have a look at a glimpse of it online or through talks. There's a certain young man that you may know as Lance Armstrong. He was an endurance cyclist. I think he won Tour de France 10 years in a row. Obviously, at some point, he had his own oopsie-daisy moment, and it turns out that he was cheating and everything. In that process, he actually authored a book. And the book I recommend to each of you is called It's Not About the Bike. So what that has to do with 5 years from now, for us as panelists, for Prof, for each of you, I'll show you what it has to do with each of you in 5 years. Another professor, even though she was acting the role of professor, she featured in a series called How to Get Away with Murder. She said something that I would like to gently put the mic down with or hand it over. You know, she said something not in that show, but she said something in real life on her Instagram feed. She said, hell is the day you pass on from this world. You actually encounter an avatar of yourself walking towards you of the person you were meant to become. And that person is carrying house you were meant to carry, actually carrying assets you were meant to own. That person has checked in everywhere on holidays you were meant to go on. That person knows the family you were supposed to have. That person knows the food security crisis you are meant to solve. So I'm closing with a challenge to the panelists in terms of what do we like to see in 5 years by saying, good people, Judgment Day is coming. It may come sooner than 5 years. Our dear moderator. Judgment Day is when some of you are in undergrad, but in 5 years, you should have gone past honors and you should be asking Prof. Namdi how to fund your PhD. Would you be in that position? Some of you have been thinking about starting businesses, so you can join us there in Sandton. We want to make the circle bigger. Come and join us. Please, you can start at Gandhi Square, but eventually make your way to Sandton. Because Sandton has a funny way. Sandton is not glam. Sandton is not fancy. You know what Sandton does? It accelerates the arrival of Judgment Day. If you and I don't know what we're doing, Sandton will chew and spit you out much quicker than any place on earth. If you can't meet your month-end obligation, this month-end you're gone. Not next year, not 2 years. You go now. You get kicked out now. So those of you that are starting businesses, start the kind of business that will make it easier for Prof. Namdi to recommend you for funding. Don't start a business that is solving a problem in your head. Solve the kind of problems that when 5 years arrives, all of us here, we won't have just to showcase our success, but it will be our success because eventually, Judgment Day is coming.
Shadrach was preaching there, right? And, you know, to also lay on what Preeti said, let's try to ensure that we solve the most basic needs. You know, if you're going to live here and you actually have an idea of how to solve a problem that you know, it's a problem that needs to be solved and you need guidance. UJ Blockchain is there. We can be able to assist. And guess what? You will not only be solving that specific problem. South Africa also has a problem of unemployment. You will also be tapping into that. So you will not just be solving one problem. You will hit a couple of bits with just one stone. So that is in closing from our panelists. We have been incredibly fortunate to hear from the 4 people who actually built working solutions. So now I want to open the floor because the questions you're sitting with are probably sharper than anything I have asked. Please keep your questions focused and we will get as many as we can. Before we begin, just a few ground rules to help us get through as many questions as possible. When you ask a question, please introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and then get straight to your question. We ask this simply to ensure that as many people as possible have an opportunity to participate. And if you have suggestions, comments, or would like to congratulate one of the speakers on their work, we encourage you to do so during the networking session after the event, where there will be plenty of time to engage with the panelists directly. So for now, let's focus on questions and let's see how many we can cover in the time that we have remaining. Okay. I just got I got a signal from our MC. We can only take 2 questions. So and everybody's in sync with that. So who would like to go first? Okay. I've seen 3 hands and some went down. Is it okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our panelists. My name is Ayanda Mpofu, and I am not a techie. I'm not in any of the sciences. I am actually a lawyer by profession and training. And I wanted to ask, because one of the things that I'm doing now is my PhD, and it is trying to find, thank you, it is in trying to create a governance solution for people within the blockchain space, particularly in supply chain contracts. So my question is essentially, do you think that the law is capable of helping you enhance what it is that you're able to do by creating sufficient enough guardrails for more people to come into the ecosystem and to make the work lighter? Or is what we are doing as lawyers and regulators and academics actually slowing you down?
Thank you so much, our future doctor and our future counsel. Yes, thank you. Before I answer, thanks for the great question. So before I answer, I need to pass on a quick disclaimer. We only have 10 minutes left because we have a flight waiting. So at the end of this question and answers, if you see us rushing in that direction, it's not you, it is us. So please forgive us in advance. And to come to your question, you know, it's an interesting thing that I think the legal fraternity, those in academia, those in practical law application, those in policy, and even those in litigation, I appeal to them through you, because you are the closest to them right now. I appeal to you as a community to try and borrow from the COVID years what we went through as a nation and what we went through as a global economy. It's easy to see things in silos, but when COVID entered the room, there was no more, he's an enemy of so and so. COVID became the common enemy. So right now, as the legal fraternity advances towards the tech sector, the academic world, and every other world in between that are leading at the front lines for the adoption of blockchain, AI, and emerging technologies, approach us to have the real conversations. Then we will give you the real answers that become the raw materials for the framework and the guardrails that you don't only need to build, but we need to pilot. That's the first point. Don't be shy. Don't be shy to offend us. You know, if we were to have these politically correct discussions, if we were to stay with diplomacy, we will never build this nation or rebuild it or restore it. So knock on our doors, reach out to us, start with us, IFAMA. We are here in Sandton. And as certain gentlemen in America said, we are easy to find. So we are here to help co-create with you the guardrails you are envisioning, to hopefully inform them and hard code some practical know-how into them, because Judgment Day is coming.
Okay, the next question.
Okay. Ansel, do you want to add on to that?
I'm actually fascinated by her question because I think the legal profession is going to become obsolete. I think we're not going to have any need for them soon. And, you know, in the blockchain, we talk about smart contracts, where contracts are being automated based on verified data. And, you know, you can now train an AI agent on all kinds of legal cases that can look at a particular smart contract information from multiple angles, from millions of angles, in a split second, to come up with an advisory component that a lawyer possibly, you know, can't do. And if they can do it, will take days and cost a lot of money. So sort of in my, you know, frame of mind, and I've been grappling with this, is whether, you know, the legal profession will still be relevant when it comes to the automation of supply chains. I do think, however, that the transition of the analog to the digital world is an interesting space for them to still be relevant in. And I think that people who study law must increasingly begin to think around what it means to be an entrepreneur, a digital entrepreneur, in that space. So it'd be interesting to talk to you about your PhD. It'd be very interesting to sit down with you and walk you through what a digital ecosystem is, and perhaps you know, you can we can exchange information or contact numbers. But I'm of the opinion that there are certain careers that are just in supply chains or digital ecosystems are just going to become less and less relevant as we go forward.
Thank you, Ansel. Unfortunately, in light of time, that would have to do in terms of... Oh, okay. Genevieve, do you have your own vision?
I'm just going to keep it very quickly. I respectfully disagree with Ansel. The realities of it is that I think there are challenges with smart contract, because at the end of the day, the algorithm, we need to understand how society flows. And this is, lawyers don't only create rules, they help us negotiate the rules. What we cannot do is have system, have individual, you know, so the system cannot sit in between. It can give you an idea, but I feel that the lawyers can then look at what is happening, because a law that was, let's just take trade laws from the US. Unfortunately, they haven't been changed since 1925, but they're not relevant today in the world that we live in. And we need lawyers to look at that. And we need lawyers to help us mitigate and negotiate the new rules. Yes, we can take those rules. We don't need as many of them because we can take those rules and put them in system. But as things change, those systems need to be and change. And I believe myself that they will be more specialized. The same way before everybody was a mathematician, nowadays to be a quant is there's a very small community. So we will see small communities of lawyers, but we will continue to have those roles, in my point of view.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists for their time, their teaching, their trailblazing. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and practical experiences with us today. I would also like to thank our audience here in the auditorium and everyone who joined us online. Your engagement, your questions, and participation have made this discussion all more meaningful. On behalf of the South Africa Switzerland Bilateral Research Chain Blockchain Technology at the University of Johannesburg, thank you for being part of this conversation. We hope today's discussion has provided valuable insights into how blockchain is shaping the future of supply chains in South Africa. And from me, Bonolo Moraga, thank you for your engagement, thank you for your time, thank you for your curiosity. Please join me in giving our panelists a well-rounded, a well-deserved round of applause. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, guys, just 1 minute. I don't want to steal the moment. Another round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Bernal. Thank you. We've reached the end of our program. Somebody says, over. At least you have a little bit of energy left, guys. I told you I'm bringing a gift for one lucky person. Thank you so much for staying to the end. And I just want to say, there's tendency that we'll trivialize your presence. So I just wanted to tell you that there's no event without you. It is very important to us as a center that you stayed to the end. Thank you, thank you. A round of applause for you. Thank you. So, to our distinguished guests, our speakers, our keynote speaker, everybody, our panelists, thank you so much. I think you will agree with me that the level of brilliance that was brought to the table, the kind of conversations that we've had, honestly, and we're not paying a cent. So, we're not trivializing that. So I think it's important that these conversations continue. Please network with all of them. They have left their details. Network with us. Stay in touch. We have a lot of events, and we don't charge you a cent for them. Okay? So we do want you to be part of us. We like you a lot, and we hope you can stay. Now, for this gift, can I get a drum roll, Nyana? Yeah. Now I want to know if people were listening. If you were not listening, it's chai. But, so, Prof. Nulu mentioned one of our programs that we're having in November. True or false? Yes. Does anybody know what BASIS stand for? Or BAKIS, right? Does anybody know what it stands for? Hello, hold on. I guess we have. Do you want to try? Yeah? No, ma'am. Do you want to try again?
Here's a hand.
Another one. Hi, guys. A round of applause for Miss. Here you go. But he needs to capture this. Oh, we never too. Guys, look at what she's winning, by the way. I know you guys know what Stanley Cups are, right? This is it. And it's branded. Here you go, my darling. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Oh, you want a picture? Another round of applause for our winner. But honestly, you guys, so if you guys want to win the likes of that, I like the program that is coming back is, can I, just 1 minute, I know it's been long, just 1 minute. So the program that is coming up is on the 16th of November to the 20th. There are a lot of prizes that can be won. There was a group that won 10,000 Rand. Mm-hmm. Yeah, clock that. So I just hope that because you are part of our database, I just hope that when we do share the flyers and details for that you guys will be part of it. We do want you to be part of our ecosystem, and we want you to stay, right? So, another round of applause for you guys. Yeah? Join. All of your questions should be directed to our UJ blockchain at uj.ac.za. We're going to answer all of them. That one I can guarantee you. Please stay in touch. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. If you do not know what we call ourselves, our very important team is there for you guys. So thank you so much, guys, for joining. This is the end. I want to say a special thank you to our host and our director, Prof. Namdi. Guys, hey. You know, There's no event without our host, honestly, and I think we can all attest at how important these things are, right? So from me, Dimakato Shabalala, remember the face. Thank you so much, guys. We do have lunch, as promised. So you're going to go all the way out like this, into the glass door, down the stairs. The menu was designed by me, because I know you guys have been here for a long time. You're very deserving of that, so... Yeah, so let's meet down there, please. Let's network. Thank you for coming, and bye. Group picture. Yeah.
I can get out of the meeting once we are done. I can leave, man. Why not? Hukum.